The subconscious mind is a fascinating thing because it works in alignment with the laws of energy. And it's an absolutely honest system that will never tell you something that isn't true. If we apply it to electricity, for example, in electricity, you have a battery or a generator that generates energy, right? For humans, that's you. That's me and you. We're generating energy. Energy doesn't leave the generator on its own. It has to be boosted out. So element one is the generator. Element two is energy out. If you're putting energy out in a responsible, disciplined, courageous way, you're going to get a good result. But you have to be sending it to the third element, which is
What is abundance? How do you define that?
abundance. It was really well defined by Aristotle several thousand years ago. He called it eudaimonia. We call it today well-being or thriving. And when you're thriving on every level, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, that's abundance.
Amazing. Abundant. Yeah. We talked in the beginning before we started recording about the concept of this podcast, right? It's people that are doers going forward. You said that positive abundance is our natural state of being. Can you unpack that a bit? What do you mean it's our natural state of being, positive abundance?
If you look at the laws of energy move inexorably toward higher and better function. It's what we call evolution. Right, it moves forward, it doesn't go backwards. We never you can you can actually explore that in your own being, because when you become aware of something, when your awareness expands, when your um, comfort zone expands, it never goes backwards, it always goes forward, it always gets bigger, it doesn't get smaller. We don't go backwards. Energy doesn't go backwards. Energy, if we're following the laws of energy as they are laid out, everything leads toward abundance. And as I mentioned in the book, abundance doesn't guarantee that you get positive abundance. You can get an abundance of things you don't want, as well as an abundance of things you do want, based on how you use the laws of energy. But if we're looking at the laws of energy and the way they flow naturally toward an abundance of things that are beneficial. Look at Earth. Look at all the things that exist here to help all of us be thrive, just to thrive. If we're using life correctly, if we're using energy correctly, we are in a space of thriving, and that just gets better and better and better as we learn and adjust and develop ourselves.
How do we
And
use?
again,
Oh,
and again,
sorry.
we don't go backwards once we've gained something.
That makes total sense. And I like what you said about you can have an abundance of something you don't want. So how do you use energy to tap into abundance? How do you do that? What are some things that you do to harness the laws of energy to thrive?
I created the Success GPS assessment to look at all the 7 parts of the laws of energy that lead to abundance, or of good or bad. Um, and those things, when we recognize what those are and we're utilizing them correctly, then we can direct energy the way we want it to go. The subconscious mind is a fascinating thing too, because it works in alignment with the laws of energy. Absolutely in alignment. It's an absolutely honest system that will never tell you something that isn't true. And so if we look at the law, that the subconscious mind and how it functions, and we look at all the pieces of the laws of how energy functions, we have, if we apply it to electricity, for example,
Yeah.
in electricity, you have a battery or a generator that generates energy, right? For humans, that's you. That's me and you. We're generating energy all the time. We're getting it from the same way that a generator gets it from. The generator gets it from water or air or some moving source. We get it from food and the air we breathe, right? And our own movement. So you're the generator. If you're sending energy out, so energy doesn't leave the generator on its own. It has to be boosted out. And if we're boosting it out in a responsible, disciplined, courageous way, and we know what we're boosting it toward, right? So element one is the generator. Element two is energy out. And if you're putting energy out in a responsible, disciplined, courageous way, you're going to get a good result. But you have to be sending it to the third element, which is the receiver. In the case of electricity, that might be a light bulb. In the case of you, it's your goals, it's your dreams, it's your plans, it's your intentions, right? And if those are unclear, then you can be as responsible and disciplined and courageous as you want to be. But if you're sending your energy out to an unclear goal, you're going to get unclear results. You're not going to get good results. So if your goal is clear, and I call it telephone number clear, because the reason it has to be telephone number clear is because if I have all 10 numbers of your phone number of your phone, but I don't have them in the right order, the odds of reaching you are going to be pretty slim. If I only have 7 of the 10 and 3 of those missing are not the area code, since I know where you live, if there's something else in that mix, I'm still never going to reach you. I'm never going to guess what those 3, even 1 or 2, I'm not going to guess what they are. So it has to be telephone number clear.
Hmm.
And then once we send it to a telephone number clear goal, then we have to be willing and open to receiving energy back. The reason, if we look at electricity, the reason a thermostat or a rheostat works is because a rheostat introduces resistance on the return line. And if you're not open to receiving back what you send out, you've put resistance on your own return line.
Ooh, I like that. I like
Yeah.
that a lot. I want to get to that. Receptivity is a huge thing, and that's probably my biggest opportunity when we talk about the law of abundance. And you break it down so well in an electrical circuit in the book. So we'll dive into that. Um, but one thing you said a minute ago was the telephone number clear, and I want to dive into that a little bit. Here's where I go, and I think you were saying a moment ago about the connection between the subconscious and the conscious mind.
Mhm.
So is telephone number clear? Maybe I'll use an example and tell me and dial me in, no pun intended. The example I would have is a lot of people say, for instance, I want to quit my job.
Mhm.
To me, that's sort of like I always say, like, your brain doesn't hear the modifier; they just hear the subject. So I want my job is what it hears, and quit is what the conscious brain tries to trick the subconscious brain in. So when I hear telephone number clear, in my mind, and tell me where I'm wrong here, it's being very, very clear on what you do want and being aware that most of the time we're really clear on what we don't want. Is that the right way to look at this?
Absolutely, and there's more to it than that. The subconscious mind moves, and again, it's aligned with the laws of energy, but it moves energy in the direction of whatever you're focused on.
Mm,
So the reason many people set what they believe is a goal and they never achieve it is for a couple of reasons. One is because oftentimes we set a goal. So today you might set a goal that you want something to happen in December, right? A specific thing to happen in December. But you don't take ownership of it today. You set it out for December. The subconscious mind lives in the here and now. And so if you set it out for December and you haven't taken ownership of it today so that you're taking steps now toward the goal, that's why we have so many crisis workers. They ignore the subconscious mind doesn't bother with it until you own it. And so when it gets to be a crisis, they own the crisis. And the subconscious mind goes, okay, it's time to go into action now. And so now instead of having 2 months, right, to complete your goal, you only have 10 days or 2 weeks. So that's crisis mode. That's one reason why we don't achieve our goals. The other reason is because we are focused on both ends of the spectrum. We might say, I want this, but I have this. And your subconscious mind is going to direct you toward what you have because you have ownership of it. So if you want something, but you don't own it, if you don't have as much energy and ownership around what you want as you do around what you have, you're going to keep getting what you have because it runs energy toward what you give it a conduit to run toward.
wow. I had to write that down. That was like mic drop worthy. Okay. Then the question for me becomes, and especially if I'm listening to this, is like, how do I get that? And I wrote this down for me. I always wanted to clean up my diet. And I kept saying everything but sugar and flour. And then I would eat a lot of sugar and flour. Right? It's to your point, right? I was owning that. That's what I was owning. I was owning more of what I have.
You're
And then at
focused on
one
sugar
point,
and
for about a
flour.
30-day period, I said, only animal product is what I'm going to eat. I'm going to eat animal products, so carnivore essentially, or keto, whatever it is. So I did, because I owned that. But I don't know how I did that. How did I own that? How did I own that versus yeah, let me
Because
start there.
because
How did I own it?
that's what you focused on. I will eat only meat. I will not eat the subconscious mind doesn't hear negatives. I will not eat sugar. I will not eat flour. It only hears eat sugar, eat flour. And that's what you did because you were focused on that end of the spectrum. I tell people all the time when I ask them what they want to get from a session, for example, and they say I want to quit doing this. I'm going, no, 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 that's the wrong end of the spectrum. What would you get if you quit doing that? Let's look at that end of the spectrum. So we could do the same thing for you. What would you, and you've already found if I focus on meat and I'm eating just meat, I'm getting the result I want, right? So if I'm focused on meat and healthy vegetables, that's what I'm going to be eating. That's what the subconscious mind is going to direct you toward. That's what energy is going to direct you toward. My daughter tells me I'm the queen of acronyms, but one acronym I use because it is everything is built around this is the ACE formula, ACE: awareness, choice, and energy flow. Because we have to become aware that we need to make a change before we can make another choice, right? Awareness leads to choice, and choice leads to energy flow. So if my awareness is, well, I need to lose weight, right? And now what I'm focused on is my weight. I'm not focused on a healthy body. I'm not focused on an image of what I want to look like or choose to look like, right? And so, because energy flows where we give it a conduit to flow toward, if we're not aware that we're doing that, we can't fix what we can't see. We can't make new choices if we're not aware that we need to make new choices.
That's so
And when we
interesting.
make a choice, energy flows either to a good result or a bad result. So choice becomes to do or not to do. It's like Yoda, there is no try, it's do or do not do. Life is a binary code that way. We do or we do not do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No,
if the choice says do this and we choose do not do it, we're going to get a bad result. If the choice says do not do it and we choose to do it, we're going to get a bad result.
is there something in how we set goals? I'm going back a little bit to the how do I own it? And and this is how I'm translating it, but there's like a lead versus lag goal debate then. So the example you were using, I want X by December, but
Mhm.
you don't go for that until 2 weeks before, because then you go into crisis and you're right. All of what you said made total sense to me. But when I think about the I'm only going to eat meat, I had an outcome that I desired. It was weight loss. It was loss of inflammation. It was eating more whole foods, not eating sugar and all of that, right? But
Half of that's the wrong end of the spectrum, though.
I'm sorry.
Half of that is the wrong end of the spectrum.
Explain that.
Weight loss, inflammation reduction, you're focused on weight, you're focused on
Agreed.
inflammation.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm asking is, when we set a goal, are we too tuned into like an aspirational dream outcome based goal often, when our goal should really be to own it, as you put it, to take an action now that's actionable to show and prove to ourselves that we own it? So, in other words, rather than I'm going to have a healthy body in December, that might be a vision. Is the
Mhm.
goal I'm going to eat meat? Is that a nuance, or am I overthinking it?
No, you're not overthinking it. Um, one of those is not actionable. Yeah, I'm going to, even the word going to puts it in the future. I'm going to, right? The subconscious mind only understands I am, I do, I here and now, here and now. So the only way we can take ownership of a goal is to put it in the here and now. I am, and you claim the weight you want to be. I am, and you claim the fitness level you want to be now. Now, I use an example of $100 million in the book. If someone comes to you and tells you that you have $100 million in Switzerland in a bank and they can prove to you it's there, but you are broke. You don't have a dime to your name, but you know that in Switzerland there's $100 million. You have no way to get there, no way to in your mind now to get the money. You would do whatever it takes because you don't have your hands on it. It's in Switzerland. You don't have your hands on it, but you own it. You know it's yours. You take ownership of what's there. So then the mindset is, it's mine. I don't have my hands on it yet, but it's mine. If we set goals that same way, if we set a goal and we say that this is my fitness level and this is my weight level, it's mine now, today. Don't have my hands on it yet, but it's mine, right? Ownership, the way the subconscious mind works in alignment with the laws of energy is is that it um, puts you in a space of holistic. It's a holistic thinking thing. So you have to see it, you have to feel it, you have to experience it. It has to be. How do you take ownership of something if you don't do that? How do you take ownership of something you can't see, feel, experience, taste, touch, smell? You can't take ownership of it. So if you compare the life you have now, and we're talking about most people out there, the life you have now compared to the life you would like to have, and you look at how much ownership you have of the life you have now versus how much ownership you have of the life you want, you'll recognize that the ownership of the life you have is so much bigger and richer and fuller and believable because you got a lot of experience there. We don't have experience here yet. So you have to create that. You have to step into it and feel it. And there's a story of Jim Carrey writing a check for $1 million. You know that story?
20
10
million
million, $10 million.
or 10 million.
Was it
Yeah.
20?
I,
Whatever.
yeah.
And carries it in his billfold. He took ownership of it. He didn't have any means at that point in time to get that, but that happened almost on the date he had on the check. That's taking ownership of something. But we think that writing something in a journal, so I'm going to be this weight by this date, right? Or I'm going to have this amount of money by this date. Going to puts it in the future.
Mm.
That
Subconscious
date,
isn't there.
that date puts it in the future. I have this and I will have my hands on it by this date. I have this.
Wow. I like that. That's a heck of a distinction. My brain was just going through the question I was going to ask, and you answered it was, what do you say to the person who hears this and says, that's like tricking your brain or trying to trick your brain? You're not creating like, oh, I am a millionaire when you're not a millionaire. Like you're creating what's the word? A disconnect within yourself. But I like what you just said. I feel like you gave it almost like two distinctions. Like, no, no, no. I have $1 million. I'll have my hands on it on this date.
Right. Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
brilliant.
It's because if you don't do that, then your subconscious mind, being a totally honest system, is going to register that as a lie and you're going to resist it. Now, your energy cycle has resistance on the return line, right? You've just turned your
Yes.
rheostat down. You just dimmed your own light because it doesn't believe what isn't true today. It only lives in the here and now. But if you take ownership of it in the here and now, and that second part is, I'll have my hands on it on this date. Same thing Jim Carrey did, right? Then that resistance isn't there. Ownership is there.
I remember when I had a big corporate job and I was doing side hustle work, if you will, for my entrepreneurial endeavors. But I started to identify as an entrepreneur in my brain, right? Like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a side hustle entrepreneur, whatever. And I'm going to be full time or quit by, I think I said April of 2021. I actually did. My last day was April 9, 2021. So, on not knowing until your book what exactly I did, that's what I did was declare it now, own it,
Right. Right.
and then give myself a future date for me to put my hands on it. And it works.
Exactly.
It
Exactly.
works when you
It
really,
always
really own it.
always works.
Yeah. So on the concept, and this is you talked about receptivity a couple of times. I really want to hit this. The part in the book, I can see them. I'll be honest, I haven't read this book in over a year, but I know it. It's in me because I've beat it up with friends. We've gone through it. I've given it away to people. So again, anybody listening, The Law of Abundance, go get it on Amazon by SD Buffington. I think there's another version that says something like it. But the circuits that you show,
Mhm.
again, I'm not an electrician. I'm not technically inclined, but it just made so much sense. You had like four different versions. There was sort of like a positive application, meaning
Mhm,
action,
mhm.
and abundance cycles with negative receptivity, meaning open, not negative like bad receptivity, but open receptivity. And that's a circle. That's an electrical circle, right? There's the plus and a minus on a battery. The plus and a minus. That's how it flows through the 9-volt battery we all lick and get shocked by or whatever. So that's one. And then you got the other models. It's like, okay, let's just turn one or the other off. So let's say you have negative application, which means you're not doing anything, but
Mhm.
you're wide open. Hey, I'm willing to accept it. I'm entitled to it without any application. And we'll get into the law of attraction and everything. Like that's a failed version. Same thing if you have a positive and a positive. You have a positive charge and a positive or a resistance at the bottom. It doesn't work. So on and so forth. Can you explain how to remain open, how to be a good receiver, how to have open receptivity? My biggest opportunity, and I'm sure many people on here, and the evidence for me is a long question, but the evidence for me is I fight people when they want to pay the bill. Somebody wants to pay the bill at dinner for me. I fight them like, no, you can't do it. They want to do this for me, but I'm unwilling to receive it. That's the key to me, or the indicator to me that I'm a terrible at times receiver. And I work on this, but how do people get better at receiving?
Well, that's a really good question because I had that problem years ago myself. I'm a giver and I had a hard time receiving until I heard a story. And I'm going to tell you that story right now. And all those people who aren't good at receiving, I hope they'll hear it too.
Mm,
The story is about two little kids. They're 5 and 6 years old, a son and a daughter. They've been receiving an allowance for about a year. And they decide just before Christmas they're going to save their allowance so they can buy presents for their parents because their parents are always buying presents for them. They want to give them something back. So they ask their grandmother to take them shopping, and she offers to give the money. They're no, no, no. We wanted to do it with our own money. Well, they only had $4 or $5 each, so she helped them find little gifts that they could buy, one for mom and one for dad, for the $4 or $5 that they had available to them. They take it home. They want to wrap it themselves. They want it to be completely from them, right? So they wrap it as best they can, and they put it under their little presents under the tree. And Christmas morning comes, and Dad says, "Dave, go open that present. Go get that one." Dave gets it and he opens it and he squeals with delight. He's so excited because that's perfect. How did you know? This is what I wanted. This is awesome. So they do the same thing with Sue. Sue, go over and get your present, right? And so she does the same thing, squeals with delight. How wonderful. This is perfect. How exciting. So this happens 2 or 3 times. Dave opens 2 or 3 presents with delight, and Sue opens 2 or 3 presents with delight. And then they want to have that experience too. So they go under the tree, and Dave goes under and he gets his present for Dad. And he takes it over and he puts it in Dad's lap and he goes, "Hey, this is my present for you." And Dad opens it and it's some little trinket and he goes, "Oh, that's nice. Go get that one," pointing to another present. What did he just do? He just took from that child its greatest joy. He just took its greatest gift from it. And that's the gift of receiving well. And when we don't receive well, when other people want to give us something and we don't receive it well, we are taking from them their greatest joy. Think about how you feel when you're able to give somebody something and they receive it beautifully. You're taking that from them if you don't receive well.
that's a great story, and I can see the whole thing. I love the setup, everything. You're so excited, the kids are excited, and then you take that joy from them. So, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, that answers my question and then some on on receptivity. I want to speak about clarity because I've heard you say clarity is a check waiting to be cashed, and I think this goes back a little bit to what we were talking about a minute ago. Is clarity akin to clear goals? Is that what you're talking about? The phone number that you dial in? Is that what you talk about when you talk about clarity?
Clarity can be goals, it can be intent, it can be um, our awareness of how we show up in the world. Yeah. So if we're clear about who we are, many people lack self-confidence because they're not clear about who they are. So confidence has a formula, and the formula is knowledge plus experience plus positive feedback. Always. If you look over your life, Any place you have confidence, you'll recognize all three of those things are in place. You have the knowledge of it, you have experience to validate the knowledge, and you have positive feedback either from others and or from yourself, preferably from yourself too, that says, I'm good at this. I'm good. And that's confidence. If you don't know yourself, if you don't know how you are capable of showing up in the world, then the knowledge and experience and positive feedback aren't there. Self-confidence can't be there. And so without self-confidence, none of the other things happen. So clarity has to be not just goals, but your intent for yourself, your intent for other people, your vision of who you are and how you show up. Because when you're clear about who you are and how you show up, all the other pieces kind of fall into place. You know, if this is how I want to show up in order to show up like this, right? This has to happen in my future. This has to be where I'm headed. This has to be my path.
You said to me before we started recording, I think, tell me if the stats wrong, 84% of people are not clear on who they are. Is that a fair stat?
That's correct. And the reason for that is because we come into the world a blank slate, and our parents and our teachers and our preachers and our social system tells us what we're supposed to look like. We have stereotypes for females, we have stereotypes for males, we have familial stereotypes, we have shoulds and ought tos, that all of that is impressing itself upon us from the time we're born until we get to adulthood. And between birth and 7, you're just an open sponge. You're an open book. Things get fed into you. And what happens is if you come into the world and um, Bill Maher says that children are feral, meaning they're wild. They have to be trained. Well, before we're trained, when we're still feral, right? Our parents are trying to direct us, and even if they're doing it in a positive way, that it is still conditioning us towards something else. So many of us put on a mask as a child, and it's a mask of conformity. It's a mask that lets us be in our family unit, in the school system, in whatever church system we're in, and be acceptable. So it's a mask of conformity, of acceptability. If we keep that on, if we put it on early enough and we keep it on long enough, we identify with the mask. We don't
Mm.
identify with our truth. We don't even know what our truth is. We're looking at the mask. And so when you give someone an assessment, and I use an example, I'm left-handed. And I use an example of in some countries, you can't be left-handed. You're going to get that hand slapped the minute you reach out for something left-handed. People who had their hands switched from left to right as a baby, if you ask them, are you right or left-handed? They will tell you I'm right-handed, and they will honestly believe that's true because they don't know that their hand was switched when they were a child, when they were young. If I am allowed to use my left hand and I break my left arm so that I'm not using my left arm in the moment, right? And you ask me the wrong question, are you using your left or your right hand? I'm going to honestly answer, I'm using my right hand. That isn't my truth, but it's the fact in the moment, right?
Yeah.
A lot of assessments are designed that way. They're designed, and we can only report what we know. So what Core Map does is it looks at who do you think you are? How are you functioning in the world? What's developed? What's underdeveloped? What's reactionary? And we can take all those flags and find out who you are.
Mm.
So we don't. The reality is most assessments aren't telling you who you are. They're telling you where you are.
Oh,
Where you
can you go deeper? So when you talk about assessments like DISC, does that come to mind?
are. This
Myers Briggs, those things. So
all
say that again and give me an idea. So a DISC assessment gives you this DISC, tells you you're, maybe faster paced or slower paced, you're task focused or people focused. You're more influential or you're more dominant or whatever, right? It gives you all of those. So you're saying that is where you are, not who you are.
that is where you are. If now the 15-18% of people who actually do know themselves and are functioning, it works beautifully for them.
Sure.
But for that 84%, right, that don't know that don't know they're functioning with a mask on or through a mask. And what typically happens with conditioning is bold types get conditioned toward introversion. They become less bold.
Interesting.
Males get conditioned toward thinking because that's what the stereotype is. So feeling males feel weird because they're not thinking. They don't lead with thinking like the stereotype says they should. Females are the stereotype says females are feeling types, and the thinking females are going, well, what's wrong with me? I don't lead with that, right? Um, and so we get conditioned toward whatever is the norm or presented as the norm for our station in life, our gender, our family, so many areas of conditioning. Watch commercials. Your commercials are wonderful at keeping the stereotypes alive, and so we're we have this awareness of using DISC, for example. So DISC uses dominance as the D. Positive, what we call commanders, people who take the lead and want their whole focus is achievement. They don't achieve, they don't accomplish through dominance. They accomplish through inspiration. And so they might show up as an I, a high I, because they're positive in the way they're approaching life. They're not trying to dominate anybody, they're inspiring people. So that's how that gets skewed. Um, One of the things we frequently see is people are conditioned toward what we call organizer, taking care of details, because that's what's required in the school system. We have organizer school systems, and you went through 12, 14, 16 years of organizer conditioning. And so we come out of a school system, dominant bold types come out of the school system with having developed those things. It's a really fascinating thing, too. Going through school, you're told that the thing you should be is low key, introverted,
Yeah.
follow the rules, don't ask questions, be obedient. That's what we call organizer and relator in the core thing. But then you get out of school, and the message you get is in order to be successful in business, you need to be a commander, right? And in order to be successful in relationships, you need to be an entertainer. You need to get out there. So they're telling us all through school we need to be the introverted types. And then we get out of school and they tell us we need to be the extroverted types.
Wow.
And and do you wonder why so many people are confused?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
so
so
true.
we don't, because of that, we don't know ourselves. We have a mask that almost everybody puts on. Those who keep searching and searching and searching and searching eventually find what's behind the mask and can take it off. But that's not most people.
All right. So this goes into, and we're chatting a bit about this, the concept of pliability of personality, let's call it. What I'm hearing you say in incredible eloquence is, hey, we're born away and then we're conditioned into a mask. Most of us,
Yes.
85% of us, right? 84,
Yes.
85% of us.
Yes.
So there's a very small percentage of the population that just show up as they were born.
Yep.
So are you then saying, in defiance of my friend, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, are you then saying personality is permanent?
Your core nature is permanent. Personality, what changes is your concept of who you are. That's what changes. And if we're looking at our concept of who we are as personality, because we can behave in relation to our concept of who we are, right? So if my concept of who I am is I'm shy, I am unapproachable, right? If that's the mask I put on as a child, that's how I behave. And if once I get away from my conditioned environment and I'm a seeker and I start discovering new things, that concept of myself changes. I'm going, well, I'm not really happy being shy. I'm not really happy being hard to approach, right? So then I shift my concept of that. And as that shifts, then my behaviors change. And so people say, well, personalities change. Your concept changes and your actions in relation to your concept changes. You're hardwired for what you came into the world to be. You're either bold or you're reserved. And if you're reserved, you can push outside of that reserved space that you are comfortable within. You can push outside it and be bold occasionally, but it's a push. And our position is it's not, we have a whole brain. We can use the whole thing. It's not whether you can do anything any other human being can do normally functioning. You can. It's whether doing it energizes you or drains you of energy. We're back to energy.
Yeah.
Some things energize you and some things drain you of energy. And if you're doing a lot of things that drain you of energy, you don't have the energy left to do the things you love doing. And if you're doing things you love doing that energize you, now you have energy, you have reserves of energy to go over when you have to do the things you don't enjoy doing, and you can do them better because you have a reserve of energy to do them. And so and if you look at your life, and yeah, I do this all the time. I have people look at what all four styles bring to the table. Those four styles were identified by Hippocrates over 3,000 years ago. They haven't changed. Nobody's found more or less than four.
Hmm.
But those are the segments of your brain, and the brain can actually be tested for those functions. So we have a whole brain. But if you notice things you don't enjoy doing, and you recognize you can do those for an hour or two, and the better you've developed those, probably because you're a bold type, you probably went through school and learned organizer and relator behaviors, the reserved behaviors, right? We come out of the school, bold types come out of the school system well rounded. Why? Because you learn two skill sets that you wouldn't have learned if you didn't have to. And then you get out of that system, away from the conditioning, and now you get to develop your truth. Now you get to develop your bold self, and so you become well-rounded. Where the introverted types go through an introverted school system and they come out black and white. I'm right and you're wrong. They don't have the well-roundedness.
Yeah.
So there's a benefit to being conditioned if we understand what the effect of it was and how to get away from it. If we understand how to use that conditioning effects as tools and then claim our truth. I was conditioned to the introverted styles, both of them. I just a flip of my truth. My truth is, using the core vernacular, I'm a commander entertainer. I like accomplishing things, getting things done, and I love bringing people into the mix to make it happen. Right? That's that combination. I was conditioned to relator organizer, the double introvert. But now they're developed. Those are bikes I learned to ride really well. I can still ride the bikes, right?
Yeah, that's I like that. Yeah.
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 So you never unlearn to ride those bikes once you learn to ride them. So it's actually becomes beneficial when you know that those are tools. That's not who you are. It's where you are, and you can choose something else.
As a parent, this is flashing in my brain right now. So for me, yeah, you mentioned about school. I did not fit well in school. It just was not for me. I got out of it as quickly as I could. Didn't finish college. All of that, right? And thankfully, I've had a good life despite rejecting that core institution. But or maybe my thought goes to my kids. So like my oldest kid, who's 8, he to your point about like core self, like he seemed to be, he seems like his core self, and I see it is this bubbly, vivacious, bold type. And I don't know where, because we don't put him in traditional school. We have him in extra, and it might be my wife and I unknowingly, as first time parents, placing some conditioning on him to make him seemingly a bit more shy, introverted. He's doesn't like to meet new people all the time, or it's very awkward for him, and all of that. So my brain is going to. I get how I went through that, and it took me till my 20s or whatever to say, hey, you know what? I didn't need to do all this stuff I was being told, and look, I'm doing fine. How do I get that? How do I meet my kid where he is, my oldest son where he is, and help him find his core self at 8, 9, 10 years old without the ability of him taking, a high level assessment?
That's an awesome question, and I'm glad you're asking it as a parent. Because when we are aware as parents of what our children's core nature is, we can then support it. We can encourage it. We can inspire it. We can give them some tools for the life they're going to have that is not in alignment with their core nature. So going through traditional school, you say, is not going into a traditional school, which is probably good if it's a more hands-on experiential kind
Yeah,
of
it is.
school. Perfect. That's wonderful for him. But in the process of trying to manage the behaviors of our children, if we aren't taking the time to sit down and explain to them why this is important and how it benefits them, right? Then, especially the bold types, they're not going to take it. They're going to rebel against it. And so, just knowing that this you have a bold child, and that bold child is going to flourish if you give him the right support. So, little commanders, for example, is he more serious or is he more people oriented? Is he more task oriented or people oriented?
I would say task.
Okay, so that means he leads with commander. And the way you manage little commanders, and the problem with commander children is by the time they're 2.5, 3 years old, they think they can run the show and they want to,
Yeah.
right? It's my way. I want to do it my way because it's that leadership nature. It's that natural accomplishment and moving into a leadership role. Well, at 2 or 3, we know as their parents they can't run the show, right?
Yeah.
So what you do is you redirect that energy. You don't shut it down, and that's what most parents do. They shut it down. Who do you think you are? You can't run the show, right?
My son says now, like, you're trying to rule me. And I'm like,
There you
no.
go. There you go. There you go. And understand you will never rule him
Right.
because if he feels like you're trying to rule him, he's going to resist. What you do is you understand he loves accomplishment.
Mm.
Give him projects to do. My little grandson, when he was 3 years old, the way I got him to behave all day long is to he helped me wash dishes. He watered the plants, and the way I got him to water the plants is told him they were animals in a zoo, and he's watering the animals in the zoo. As long as he had a project to do that he felt like he was accomplishing something, he was a happy little camper. And I see it all the time with commander children.
Yeah. So soccer has been his most recent thing. Again, he's 8 and he's playing in a league locally here and he's dominating.
There you go.
He's
There you
scoring
go.
like, well, but here's the thing. So he's scoring like 3 goals a game. First game, he scored 5 of the 6 goals for the team. And my wife and I both have this instinct to be like, I'm glad you're proud of yourself. But what's important, I'm cringing as I say it. Like, what's important is how hard you worked, right? But um, and it is, but at the same time, for him, it sounds like what I'm learning right now is he's hearing diminishment of the accomplishment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, how do I support it without and maybe I don't need to, but without making it like if he doesn't accomplish some things that he feels like he's less than or he's not enough. You know what I mean? Like, how do I support the accomplishment, knowing that he may not always accomplish, and if he doesn't accomplish, then he's going to feel less than, or do I just have to let him live?
Well, life itself is such that there are parts, there are compartments, there are areas of life that we excel in and areas that we don't. And when we look at um, if we can have the energy around where we excel and the wisdom around where we don't, so what you want to give him is wisdom where he doesn't excel.
Mm.
So it's wonderful that you have this skill and look how much you've achieved, and that's awesome. Never shut that down. Life, there are going to be things in life that because you're a bold kid and because you're an achiever, there are going to be things in life that are going to frustrate you. Commanders, patience isn't one of their virtues.
Yeah.
And it's why commanders are driven to achieve. That drive doesn't align with patience. Drive and patience are two different things. So he's going to learn and understand that there's going to be areas of his life that will require patience. And that's all right because learning patience, developing patience is an achievement.
Yeah.
It's an achievement, right? So if we condition things that are challenging and that aren't fun, as if you master that, you have achieved something awesome, right? He's
Yeah.
achievement oriented. He's goal directed. He If you make challenges an achievement, overcoming or mastering challenges an achievement, you're directing him in a way that he's going to be an awesome adult.
Yeah, going to the cycle of energy, the law of abundance, the positive application, and the open receptivity, negative open receptivity. I can see where a lot of us have issues with being good receivers. Like at his age right now, he doesn't have that issue for himself.
No,
He's
no.
got this application positive. He's practicing all the time. And yeah, I score goals. Like that's what I
I'm good
get.
at that.
I'm
Yeah,
good at that. When I say to him what I've been saying, which is that's great, congrats. It's really the real important thing though is that you're working hard. I'm teaching him how not to be a good receiver.
that's right. That's exactly right. You're saying you're feeling good about this, and I feel good for you, but and but always negates what came before it.
Yeah, stifling his cycle of abundance. Hey, I'm glad I met you. So now I can I can reverse this trend. Um, it's funny to me and interesting. 5 years before this book comes out, Law of Abundance, the Law of Attraction, The Secret, Esther Hicks, Rhonda Byrne, all that came out, and I just exploded. Movies and Esther Hicks is Abraham Hicks or whatever, all that whole thing. What is it about the Law of Attraction that is different from, distinct from the law of abundance, and or how does it incorporate? So just make the distinction or integrate the law of attraction with the law of abundance.
The law of attraction is one piece of the abundance formula. It's one piece of the energy formula. It is it is assuming that you already are responsible, disciplined, and courageous. You're already sending out positive energy, right? Active energy. You already have a clear goal, and the only thing that's preventing you from getting what you're envisioning getting is that you're not open to receiving. So what the law of abundance does, the way it's presented, is it gives you an openness. It helps you to be more open to receiving if you can authentically do that. Now, affirmations don't do that.
Hmm.
The reason affirmations don't do that, unless they're yours, if they're yours and you own them, yes, they're wonderful. But if there's something somebody's handed to you and say this, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy, right? But the assumption is if I'm receptive to getting what I want, then I'll get it. That the reason it works for only about 3 to 5% of people and 95% saying it doesn't work, it doesn't work by itself. It doesn't work without all 7 pieces of the formula. And the 7 pieces are you, the generator, active, receptive, courageous energy out, a clear receiver, the goal, the intent, the way you show up in the world, and an open line back. It's not just the open line back, it's all of it. And then between all of that, you have to what supports all of that is those what I call insulators. Faith in self, faith in other people, faith in a generative force, something bigger than you in life, right? You have to have those too. And what often happens is people will get on that law of attraction path, and for a little while they're open. The openness is there, so things start happening, and then something happens. Life shows up and there's a challenge, and now they shut down that open receptive line, right? Because one or more of the receivers are not in place. They don't have faith in themselves. They don't have faith in other people. They don't have faith in something bigger than themselves. So that challenging moment, that moment when things don't go like they thought they would, that flow is still flowing, right? They lose hope. They lose trust. They lose confidence because those insulators aren't in place. They're not insulated from the things that happen in life. And so if that 5% that it works for has everything else in place already. They just lacked. So these are people who work hard, who have goals in mind, who are willing to be responsible and disciplined and courageous on an average, just across the board. That's how they live their life. And what prevents them from getting what they wanted is either the receiver's not clear enough, they don't have enough clarity around what they're after, or they don't believe that all that hard work is going to return them to them in kind. They don't, one of those two things is missing, right? Where then they start looking at the law of attraction, and the law of attraction says all you have to do is believe, anything you can conceive and believe you can achieve, right? And they're going, okay, I'll just believe I can get it. Well, that might open up that receptive line that's now shut down with the rheostat's turned way down, that might open that line back up. And then they do start to receive. But that's a small percentage of the population. If, however, you're one of those people, what's one of the stuck paths, what I call the stuck in delusion, that path is the receptive. So the energy you send out is receptive. I'm praying, I'm hoping, I'm
Yeah.
dreaming, right? That's a receptive energy out. I'm not doing, I'm not action, taking action. I'm not being courageous. I'm hoping and dreaming
It's two negative
praying.
nodes on the battery.
And praying, right, exactly.
Right.
And so they're sending out receptive energy and to a non-clear goal, and they're receptive to receiving something back, but because they don't, because if you're not sending out anything, you're not going to get anything back. That path moves people steadily toward the negative abundance. And negative abundance is hoping, dreaming, praying, and not doing, right? Not having a clear goal, and being resistant, angry, and frustrated, and railing against life because you're not getting the results you want. That's leading you in the wrong direction. That's a negative path.
Wow. Yeah, the big thing as we talk through all of this, the big thing that like it just jumps out at me about the ownership, owning it, that clear goal, that phone number clear goal, like not just the numbers, like oh I know all the numbers, but the numbers sequentially in order, and boiling that down to claiming ownership for again in my mind I'm just making this distinction like I want this, I'm going to go get it, it's going to happen here, I'm going to have it there, but I have it now. Like I'm claiming it now. This is what I'm going to do. And there's positive action toward that. And then you set a date in the future for where you're actually going to have it in hand. $100 million in Switzerland or Sweden or wherever it was that you
Right.
had mentioned. Switzerland makes more sense in that context. Wow. This might go along with personality, but I want to touch on your area of genius. So you said we all have
Hmm.
one area of genius.
Right.
Are there a finite number of descriptions for what the areas of genius are, or are they uniquely 8 billion different areas of genius around the world?
Well, I don't think there's 8 billion kinds of genius. But oftentimes we don't see our genius because it's not obvious. So my genius is seeing patterns. I see patterns, and I know how to take those patterns. I'm good at researching. I can be talking to somebody on the phone, and they're asking me about something that I don't have a clue, but I know how to go find it.
Sure.
And I'm on Google finding answers for them, and they think I'm brilliant. They think I'm a genius because because I'm a genius at researching, right?
Your genius is being a genius. I
My
like that.
genius is being a genius at researching. And so I see patterns and I'm good at researching. Those are my areas of genius, and I know that, right? Um, and that leaves me open to receiving all kinds of information because what do researchers do? They go seeking information, right?
Yeah. Is genius are the ones that have the results that we all crave, whoever that might be in whatever industry or whatever, in parenting or whatever. Is their genius identified and general, or have they figured out their unique genius? So you mentioned research. There's other people in the world with, a genius for research. Is there nuance or something within that perhaps you are uniquely genius within your genius that creates the kinds of results we see and we crave with whoever it might be that we
Yeah,
look up to?
yeah. Getting more specific. Good question. More specific would be around people because I focus very much on people, their outcomes, what makes them succeed, what causes them to fail. I want to know that. I'm very focused on that. If we look at Steve Jobs, for
Yeah.
example, he was a genius at electronic things. The creativity there, right? Thomas Edison talks about genius being 99%, 1% intelligence or genius and 99% work, right?
Right.
But most people have genius in an area that once they recognize it and they claim it, it's something you do effortlessly. And most people discount it because it's effortless. Most people discount things that come easy to them because it comes easy. And they think, well, you should be able to do that. I have a son who's an artist and he's an outstanding artist, but he thinks anybody can do what he does because it comes easy to him. I have talked to people who are great orators and they think anybody can do what they do because it comes easy to them. So, your area of genius for everybody, the area of genius, you have drive around it, you have energy around it, and it's easy. It's effortless. You love it. You're in flow when you're doing that thing. What is your area of genius?
I believe it has to do with this medium. I think
Yeah, communication,
communication. Yeah. So
connectivity, communication.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the ability to kind of hear, process, and then I guess ask a deeper question or ask a better question or another question that kind of furthers the point. When you've said a few times, and I'm sure you're being polite to some extent, but when I hear you talk about feedback, confidence, right? So experience, what was it? Experience, knowledge, and feedback.
Knowledge plus experience
Knowledge
plus
plus experience plus
plus
positive feedback.
positive
When I hear great question, for me, that's validating the research I do, the work I do in this medium of doing interviews, of talking to people and trying to extract information, knowledge to help others build confidence, right? So I think that's how I identify my genius. I think this is me being in my genius.
and that's beautiful. That because that is your genius and it flows. You love it. You do it without even thinking it. If you weren't doing it, you'd be miserable, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Life would
was
be
at a
kind of
job I didn't like.
life would be boring if you weren't doing what you're doing because you stepped into your genius and you own it now. You can say authentically, this is who I am. This is my genius. I own this.
You know what's crazy about that as you talk about it? I had this job. People who listen have heard this. So, but just for you, I had this job making, 400 grand a year, equity level position, big insurance executive guy for 21 years. I did this job with the mask against my, it was a job that required, probably deep levels of analysis. People leadership was the part I gravitated toward, but still there was that analysis thing that's just not me. I'm more of a communicator by nature, and I've left that job. I shared with you, I moved, out of country. We're kind of living our version of what we feel is abundance. And I don't necessarily I don't like, this doesn't get me paid. This hour with you, I don't make any income from, right? There's other things that this leads to that create income. But I can go for weeks without one income producing activity, only doing this, which I guess it ends up being an income producing activity, but not like a 1-to-1 hour. Like that hour spent, I can give you the actual, and I don't worry about money because I just know somewhere in me, I feel somewhere in me that this is the highest and best use of whoever I was born to be, of the skills I was born with, of the passions that I have. This is the medium, podcasting, that we have in this society. But I just feel like no matter what, like as long as I'm doing this, it'll be fine. I think if I'm hearing you right, that sort of confidence, that recognition of genius, that true self, I hope is the light turned up or the dimmer turned up on the cycle of abundance.
Oh, absolutely. There's an old axiom that says if you love the work you do, you'll never work a day in your life. You
Yeah.
love what you do. And it's abundance isn't about money only. Money's part of the equation, but that isn't it. We talked earlier about what is abundance. It's about being in flow. It's about loving what you're doing and being proud of how you show up in the world, right? And having that sense of well-being that just fills everything. Your relationships are good, your life is good, your work is good, right? And that has nothing to do with money, but because you're in an abundance mindset, you're right to think the money will come. It will because you're in an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
And because energy moves in the direction we allow it to move, and you're allowing it to move toward abundance, positive abundance.
A lot of leap of faith in that, though, for many. Many have this is quote Thoreau quote, I think informed pretty much all of your work, which is the massive men live lives of quiet desperation. Tell me if
Yes.
I'm wrong on that, but the problem is people value, or people are more afraid of uncertainty than they do value happiness, right? So they're more afraid of uncertainty than they value happiness, and that's that massive men live lives of quiet desperation. But it takes a leap of faith, some sort of leap of faith to dive into what you think is the highest and best use of you, and trust that your family will still have food on the table. So it's hard, but man, I can't imagine doing anything else.
Well, and it goes back to what you're describing there is that comfort zone. It's hard to get out of the comfort zone. It's
Yeah.
scary. But once you step outside it, you never step back in it. It expands and it never goes back to its old size again, right? You now have a whole new level of awareness and confidence and capability, and it never goes backwards. But stepping outside of that comfort zone, most people don't recognize their comfort zone's a prison. It's not a safe haven. It's a prison. And if they're willing to step outside and it's a self-imposed prison, they can open the door and walk out anytime they want to, right? But it does take confidence. It does take faith. It does take the belief, and especially if you've tried it before and it didn't work and you don't know why it didn't work. So, okay, I tried stepping outside of my comfort zone. I got slapped down and I got back in and I'm staying there, right? I did it 4 times and 4 times I got slapped down and I'm done, right? The reality is you can't stop stepping out and trying something different because what you tried might not have been sufficient. Maybe you didn't have clarity, right? When I
Yeah.
look when I do the success GPS, which is an assessment that says here's what you're doing or not doing to get the results you're currently getting, so that you then know what to adjust to get the results you want. When I did my own using the laws of energy, what I discovered is if I look back over my life, and you'll know exactly what yours is too when you think about this. When I look back over my life at the areas where I've succeeded, all elements were in place on the laws of energy. Um, where I didn't succeed, where I lacked success, it was always the receiver. The receiver was not clear enough. So for me, I now know that if I'm not getting the results I want, my receiver's not clear enough. I need to get clear on the receiver because when I'm clear and I own it, and when I'm clear enough that it's mine, I can get what I want. And I know that it's happened so many times. But if I've stepped outside of a comfort zone, an individual has, and they got slapped down multiple times, they don't know to examine why did that go awry? Why did that fail? Why did I not succeed there? What are the parts of that formula that I didn't do? And for most people, it's the receiver. They're not clear. They don't have ownership.
We're on the doorstep of 2024.
Mhm.
And there's so much in this episode. I hope people listen to elements of it twice, the whole thing 3 times if you need to. If I'm sitting here going, okay, wow, all right, I get it. There's some building confidence, understanding, being a better receiver, owning it, all of those things. Like, okay, I'm a month away or whatever from a new year, and there's an energy that goes into a new year and everything. What is one thing, if I'm listening to this right now, what is one thing going into 2024 that I could claim right now, do right now, an action step, an idea, whatever it might be, something I need to write down? What is one thing you would recommend to everyone listening going into 2024 that they do as soon as they turn off this podcast?
I will go back to Plato's wisdom of know thyself. Know how you show up in the world because right now, post COVID, there's this fear level that wasn't there before. There's
Yeah.
this sense of, I don't have the control I thought I had. The reality is, you never had control. The only thing we ever had control of, complete control of, is ourselves and how we show up in the world. So the one thing I would recommend that people do as the new year approaches is to decide, how do I want to show up in the world? It- what's out there does not define what your future is going to be. It does not define what your life experience is unless you let it. If we recognize what we have control of and what we don't have control of, then we can focus on what we have control of and develop it and grow it and polish it and perfect it so that how we show up we're proud of. And when you recognize how you want to show up in the world, then that pathway that's going to let you keep walking the path you claim is going to just kind of lay out for you. The subconscious mind's brilliant at that.
Yeah.
It's you don't have to know how you're going to get there. You just have to know where you're going and why you're going there. How and why.
Yeah. I love that. So, so good. There's assessments people can take from you that you have that will help with claiming who they are, knowing thyself. Where can people go to find some of these assessments and learn more about what you're doing?
There's two sites: the quantumleapsystems.com and quantumleapuniversity.org. That's the area that has coaches listed that where I train coaches. But Success GPS is an assessment that I'm happy to offer to your people, listeners, as a free assessment.
Oh,
It
wow.
takes about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go through it to answer yes. It's a yes or no. It's a it's again, that's the binary code. It's do or don't do. There's no try.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So they go through and they answer yes or no. And based on those answers, then we can know where along the laws of energy they're not tracking. And then it gives them the awareness to know what to focus on.
Where can we get access to that?
Go to sorry, go
That's okay.
to the law of or go to quantumleapsystems.com/success GPS.
Quantumleapsystems.com forward slash success GPS.
Success dash GPS. Yes.
Success dash GPS. We'll make sure that's in the show notes and we'll get it out to our list when we announce this episode. Wow, Dr. Buffington, I could go for another 3 hours with you. I have more notes. I was going to talk about exiting Oz, some organizational stuff, but we'll leave that for another day. Thank you so much for your time today. I truly appreciate it. It's an honor, and I hope everyone picks up The Law of Abundance. Incredible book, life changer for me. So thank you.
And thank you so much, Jamie. It's been awesome being able to talk to you.